The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Hello everyone, it is Mark Kelly here. I hope you're doing really well wherever you are in the world. And a part of our Alldus ServiceNow podcast series, I'm very happy to welcome Andy Venables. Andy is CTO and founder of a company called PopX. Andy, thanks very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to be here.
So, Andy, tell us a little bit about you, your journey. Then we could talk a little bit about PopX. It'd be lovely just to kind of find out, why you went on that journey yourself, because for a lot of entrepreneurs, they're trying to kind of scratch an itch, but it's also trying to figure out what continues to give you that energy to go on that journey, because there's certainly other ways or routes to make a living.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, where to begin, I guess. So for me, I've always been a developer, right? I've always been a really keen technologist. I think I was thinking about this the other day. I think my dad brought home our first computer maybe when I was 6 or 7. And I think he literally just left it in front of me. And by the end of the day, I was doing all sorts of things with it. And so, that just sparked something in me. I just found it very natural, was really excited, was really inquisitive about it. And then obviously, as I got a bit older, a funny thing, actually, I got a calculator in my maths class in secondary school, and you could program on that calculator. And so I would sit at the back of my maths class and just sit there and write little programs on this tiny calculator, this tiny screen, and just seeing what I could get them to do. It was just something I was excited by. I was really fascinated by what you could do. And that really started me off on the journey of, ultimately, teaching myself to code by making little projects, making websites, and all the rest of it. And ultimately, then I went off to university and did computer science. And that was really interesting because it kind of solidified everything that I knew, but also taught me lots of new things as well. And so it's a really interesting thing when you self-taught to code, as I'm sure many people listening are. You then get a bit of formal training and you realize all the things you were doing really well and all the things that you weren't doing so well. And so for me, it was a great way to complement those two skills. But it's really funny. After university, I thought, I've always been quite entrepreneurial. As I say, I was making the websites ultimately to make a business, right? So I thought the greatest way to earn the greatest amount of money is probably in sales. And by the way, that still might be true, but I went into a job in technology sales. I think I lasted 3 months. I'm not sure if I got, maybe it was 2.5 months. Ringing people up, asking if they want to buy software just wasn't for me. And so I went off and I got some other more traditional IT-based jobs, and that's basically what led me to discover the fantastic world of service management, ITIL, and ultimately hear about this chap called Fred Luddy, who'd started this really exciting cloud platform company. And back this would have been 2010, 2009. So it was pretty early days then. And yeah, as soon as I heard about the company, I think I logged on, got a demo environment, as you did. It wasn't the same as a PDI like you have today with ServiceNow. You just get a very brief demo. And I think that within an hour I put my CV into ServiceNow looking for a job. And really that was the start of my love affair, I guess you could say, with ServiceNow.
It's interesting because you went from the sales of calling people up, selling on the software side, and then going back on the technology side. A lot of people will start with the technology, developing those skills, and then get into the sales side. And it's a really strong foundation for being very successful. You kind of did it the other way.
Yeah, look, I mean, you've got to do what you love, right? I think if you invite my wife on the podcast, she'll probably say those 2.5 months when I was in sales, I wasn't very happy, wasn't very miserable, because not only could I not do it, I had no motivation to do it, right? And it's that old cliche, isn't it? Do something you love and you won't work a day in your life. And so, I very quickly realized I had to go back to what I loved and what I enjoyed doing, which was doing the technology, not just selling it, and so forth. And so I think that was quite an easy one for me. But then it's funny that as I come full circle to to now running the business, etc. Sales is such a big part of it, such an important part of it. I no longer have to ring people up and ask them if they want to buy software, but I have to be aware of what our salespeople are doing and aware of that process. And that's given me, I have a leg up into their world. I understand what they're doing. I try not to get involved, and I certainly can hopefully support them in those sales journeys. So it was a good bit of experience, even if it wasn't what I wanted to do personally.
Yeah, and I think the two best pieces of advice I always offer is, work on a job that gives you energy first and foremost.
Yeah.
It obviously has to pay the bills, but first one gives you energy, and then the second thing is, if you marry the right person, you're going to be good, right? So those two things, if you can kind of get them right, and that's 17 years of staffing, just from working and engaging with people and seeing the energy they have when they have a role. And I actually spoke to a candidate, a VP I placed yesterday, so it was a catch-up call after 6 weeks. No, it was 3 months in the business, and I said, how is it compared to the previous role? And he says, it's actually 1,000 times better. And my wife says it's 1,000,000 times better. So,
yeah.
So it's funny how your other half and we'll see that you when you log off, because you are that person. So getting that right, and then tell us a little bit about how PopX came around, why you felt it was worth to go on the journey, right? Because for anybody who hasn't gone on the journey to being an entrepreneur, and it's funny, I spent previously 11 years helping people hand in their notice, but when I actually had to hand in my notice myself to start up a new business, that's where you really get empathy and design thinking and actually in someone's shoes, because you see what a big impact, particularly when you have to say to the half, I'm now going to go on this journey, and that certainty we previously had, that's going to become a little bit different. So what was that like? What was that conversation like, and how did you feel about doing that?
Yeah, so I think maybe if I pick up that story from where I left off, which is, I put my CV into ServiceNow. I got a job there. I was, really proud, and I went off and I actually spent 6.5 years at ServiceNow. And yeah, wow, what a company, right? Fantastic platform, fantastic culture, fantastic customers, and just all the rest of it. It was really great. And I think looking back, certainly with hindsight, I always had a little fire in me that I wanted to own and run my own business. And looking back, what I often think now is, thank God I didn't do it in my 20s or even my early 30s, right? Because I didn't know anything. I was, just a kid, relatively speaking, etc. And actually, I learned so much at ServiceNow. I was really lucky. I did travel all over the world and work with many people from California all the way to Australia, and I met so many smart people at ServiceNow, and they really helped me grow my own skills and learn things. But that fire was always inside of me. And I think for me, I do remember in particular, there was a day when I sort of woke up, and I'd probably been thinking about, crazy ideas for websites or apps that I could build to maybe try and be an entrepreneur. And then I think I woke up one day and sort of said, well, why don't I just do the day job, but for myself? I really like this ServiceNow world. And I want to be an entrepreneur. Why can't I connect the two dots? And I actually happened to be working with quite a lot of ServiceNow partners at the time, and many of those were sort of founder-led consultancy businesses or founder-led app businesses, and it demystified it for me. Right, they would tell me their journey over dinner, etc. And I think it's always a lot simpler maybe than people think it is, right? You have to make the plunge, right? And making the plunge can be the hardest thing, but once you do it, it's if you're really driven by it, if you're really motivated by it, it's really what you want to do. I don't think it's that hard, or at least there's certainly lots of people around who will support you and do it.
What I found most interesting for being in the community of ServiceNow as a partner and figuring out what it's like in that community, going to knowledge and things like that, and we've 700 episodes of the ServiceNow podcast, is how comfortable they are. People leaving ServiceNow, setting up their own company, people working for partners, end users, coming back to ServiceNow, and working in the world of recruitment, I've seen years and years don't ever talk to me. You're dead to me. You're leaving our business. And then in ServiceNow, it's kind of like a rite of passage almost.
Yeah, I mean, for me, most of my adult life has been ServiceNow, right? So I don't really have many other perspectives of how other enterprise software vendors do it. But to me, I think two things. I think it's an oil tanker, right? ServiceNow, it is, or it's a giant rocket, or however you want to describe it. And so they're pretty clear on their course and their journey. And they've got the platform, but also they have the great culture. And so whilst there might be some actual fantastic engineers who have contributed lots to ServiceNow is far bigger than the whole, right? And actually, if you look at the ecosystem as a whole, well, actually, you have to look at the ecosystem, right? ServiceNow is the last thing they are is arrogant, right? There's the old saying that Fred used to have about hungry and humble, right? And I think they know better than anyone that to make ServiceNow work in all these businesses worldwide, it takes an ecosystem, right? ServiceNow can't do all the consulting. They're never going to create all the best applications, etc. And so they need that ecosystem. So, not being precious about people coming, going, and then perhaps coming back. It's just one way that you can help to support your ecosystem, and then everyone wins, and all sailboats rise, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the mindset that really, really is clear to me from talking to the different people in that ecosystem. So PopX is going about 5 years now. Is that right? Give or take?
Yes, we just gone past 5 years in September.
5 years.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it hasn't been a straightforward path. What was the niche that you felt needed to, I suppose, inspire you to go down that journey? And have you stayed to that niche, or have you done the average, what so many different people do, which is pivot, or is it a mixture of both?
Yeah. So I mean, the first thing is to talk about the timeline, right? So we've been going for 5 years, which means we started in September 2019, and I think everyone will remember what happened in March 2020. Within 6 months of us starting, we obviously had the pandemic, we had the lockdown. So have we had bumps in the road? Yes, absolutely. The whole world had a pretty major event there that we had to live through. For us, it was actually quite enlightening that what it allowed us to do is really hunker down and continue to build out our platform, really focus on our technology, because we couldn't go out really seeing lots of customers and winning lots of business. So we did what anyone would do when they've got a bit of time, which is really build our technology and build the platform. But to come back to why PopX and why we're a little bit different. What I observed when I was at ServiceNow was this fantastic platform with fantastic culture, and I worked out with a number of blue chip and other companies, and what I saw was both this love of the platform, but also a tiny bit of frustration with the platform. We all know it's not the cheapest piece of software on the planet, and so therefore the pressure is quite high to get that return on investment. And I think I saw firsthand that there can be a bit of frustration when you don't maximize that return on investment. And so, the number of CIOs that I saw, maybe stake their careers on making an investment in ServiceNow, and then a few months, maybe a year later, they've had to chip away at their ambition, because they couldn't necessarily get the delivery model right. Now, the platform was, in my opinion, never to blame, but I'm a big fan of ServiceNow, so I would say that. What I identified was potentially being one of the issues was the way that ServiceNow is delivered, and so. Whilst I worked in professional services consultancy for a long time, I felt it was part of the problem. And charging by the hour, right, and then leaving after 3, 6, 9, 12 months to go on to the next thing. And is that really in the customer's best interest? And so I had a background in managed services before that, and so my idea was, well, why don't we offer ServiceNow, but as a managed service, as a fully managed service? And I think there are people doing that, but we do it in a little bit of a different way. And we make sure that we really partner with our customers for success, and we make sure we get some of the base features right, so that we have the framework for success. We're really trying to address some of that up front. And so for me, that was the edge. That was the thing that I saw that I thought was a bit different. And so we started talking about that message to a number of customers, and it was very well received. and that gave us the confidence to then to make the leap and start out on the journey.
How important do you think certifications, training, staying up to speed is? Because it almost feels like a full-time job to be at that point. And if people aren't involved in the ecosystem or may underestimate what it is to stay relevant.
Yeah, look, so certifications are really important, right? Oh, not full stop, but but nearly full stop. And the reason they're important is the vast majority of services that are delivered today are delivered via professional services in a consultancy environment. So the customers are purchasing either via a partner or via a contractor, an individual, and they need to have confidence in that individual can turn up and do the work for them. And certifications is one way to start to address some of that confidence gap. So they are absolutely really important. For us, our business, we don't sell people. We don't sell people by the hour, except we don't do any consultancy, we don't do any professional services. We're selling a managed service. And the way I like to describe it is we're selling the outcome, right? And quite often we have to say to the customer, look, you're buying the outcome. You have to let us get there however we need to together. And actually, whether I've got, James with his 20 certifications, or I've got, Bob, who's only got one certification, you're buying the outcome from me, and I'm going to manage, I know my people best. I'm going to manage it to make sure you get there. And so we don't have pressure from our customers to maintain high levels of certifications. We of course have pressures from ServiceNow to maintain lots of certifications to stay in the relevant bands of the partner program, which is fair enough. But look, we don't have customers coming to us and saying, show us your certifications. But I am fully aware that that's probably a feature of the different path that we've taken. And for the rest of the market, it's super, super important. So my personal perspective is probably different to the majority of the folks hiring in the ecosystem.
Yeah. So when you look at the trends of where things are going, I think for a lot of people, they've been overwhelmed with Gen AI, what it can do, what it says it can do, the reality of using it versus the hype. Where do you think it's going in the next kind of 6 to 9, 12 months?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, look, I would be quite naive to say that I knew where we were going. I think most people, it's a bit of a mystery. But what I think we do know for certain is the pace of change is accelerating, and it's accelerating for good reason, right? It's accelerating because we now have more capability that can empower individuals to get more done, right? And you could think about this as just the natural ecosystem of a platform like ServiceNow that is phenomenally powerful at workflow, business rules, and all the rest of it. That accelerated what developers and indeed service desk analysts and engineers could do with their time on the platform. And now we've got Gen AI. We're sort of turbocharging that acceleration, aren't we? I think overwhelmingly this first wave of Gen AI is being defined as virtual assistants, right? And that's whether it's, Copilot is essentially just someone who helps you write code, right? It doesn't replace the developer. And actually, where I believe when people have tried that, it's been quite unsuccessful. However, turbocharging the developer and making them far more productive. And the same goes for a customer care agent as well, right? Are we at replacing a customer care agent yet? I don't think so. I don't think anyone likes that Amazon experience of only being able to speak to a bot. But can we turbocharge those customer care agents to do it? Yeah. And then if you think about the space that ServiceNow sits in, they have all those user seats for those. So in a lot of ways, ServiceNow is absolutely on the apex of the ability to enable some of this transformation. But there is a thing that I really want to hark back to here is we have some customers who are still on, or we had some customers that are still on the CSM standard licensing. And for those that don't know, standard licensing doesn't include predictive intelligence, task intelligence, and some other things. And so we had this customer come to us and say, well, we want to do Gen AI. And it's like, okay, great. Yeah, we really want to help you with that. But we also need to be mindful that there's other AI and machine learning that's been around for 5 years, I think it is now. And why haven't we adopted that yet, right? And why is it we now want to adopt this? And I think that's something I'm always really caution of, because something that I think ServiceNow does really well is focus on individual use cases, right? Task intelligence is actually relatively simple, but it can have a huge ROI. And so we need to be really, careful not to get sucked in by the shiny thing, the shiny new thing, right? And be really concentrating on where is the return on investment available. If Gen AI can double an agent's output in a day, then that's a clear return on investment. If we just want to put out a press release that we've layered in AI into our business, then we need to think about how that's going to stack up for the long term.
Yeah, it's interesting because where we're seeing the real value is that domain specific knowledge, proprietary information, solving low-hanging fruit problems that are being done across thousands of enterprises. That's your foundation, and then start to build on top of that. And then having the conversation, like, what would a good outcome look like to you in 12 to 6 to 3 months? And do we need this tool to use it, or could we actually get by using something else? And then having those conversations. And I think people feel a lot more comfortable when you do put it back to them and speak about it. Andy Venables, CEO and founder of PopX, thanks very much for joining us on the Alldus ServiceNow podcast.
Thanks very much, Mark. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.